So, good morning to all of you and a very warm welcome. I think we're in for an exciting moment, an exciting morning. My name is Thomas Matusek. I'm the Vice President of the Internationale Wirtschaftssenat, IWS. And in my former life, I was the German ambassador to the United Nations, to Great Britain and to India. And now in my daytime job, I'm a senior advisor of the London-based consulting firm Flint Global. Now, on behalf of the Executive Committee and the Board of Directors of the Internationale Wirtschaftssenat, I'm delighted and honored to invite you to our conference, our webinar, Connecting Minds, Creating the Future, with the focus on mobility. The partners for our conference here is the Association of German Chambers in Industry and Commerce, as well as the German Emirati Joint Council for Industry and Commerce. And I'm quite proud to say that we managed to bring together a very handsome number of thought leaders, experts, practitioners who deal mainly with one issue today, and that is mobility and connectivity. By the way, as a run-up to the big event this year, the EXPO 2020 in the United Arab Emirates. Now, globalization and mobility and connectivity belong together. I would even go so far to say that mobility is the lifeblood of our economy in a globalized world, but also very, very important for individuals. I mean, we all have seen during the painful months of the pandemic, the lockdowns, how important it is for our daily life. And also on a perhaps anecdotal note, you remember a couple of weeks ago when a container ship got stuck in the Suez Canal. Now, this small incident sent ripples throughout the international economy and shows how important this issue is. Now, what we want to do today is discuss opportunities and challenges, but also, and this is very important, I find, to learn from each other. Because in an interconnected world, nobody has the final answer, the exclusive truth. Now, before I hand over the floor to Dr. Volker Treyer, the Chief Executive of Foreign Trade and member of the Executive Board of the Association of German Chambers in Commerce and Industry, I would like also to thank our team behind it, and that is our organizing team, the DIHK and the AHK. And I would also like to very briefly introduce our impressive list of outstanding speakers today. First and foremost, of course, Her Excellency Mrs. Hafsa Al-Ulama, the United Arab Emirates Ambassador to Germany, Stefan Glebke, the CFO of Schernau, Dr. Khalid Alexander Sabach, the head of EMEA, Domain Service, ZF Aftermarket, and Managing Director of ZF Middle East, Mr. Amir Melad, Managing Director, Middle East Tier InnoHub LLC, Mrs. Tala Al-Alzari, the Director of District 2020's Innovation Ecosystem, EXPO 2020, Mr. Reto Leutenegger, the CEO of eForce One AG, Mr. Alan Williams, the UPS Vice President, EXPO 2020, Sponsorship and Operation, and of course, our moderator today, Oliver Oehms, the CEO of the German Emirati Joint Council for Industry and Commerce, AHK. Now, before we start, one technical remark. Please make sure that all your microphones are muted. If you want to enter the debate, if you want to ask a question, make a statement, etc., please use the chat function, and then my colleague Jasmin Kuchenbauer will let you in. And by the way, the same goes if you experience any technical glitches or difficulties, just the chat function, and Jasmin will take care of it. And now, without further ado, it's my great pleasure to yield the floor to an old friend, Dr. Volker Treyer, please.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency Thomas Matusek. Excellency Hafsa Al-Ulama, dear Peter Nussbaum, happy to see you in this call. Oliver Oehms, of course, honorable speakers, guests from the international business community, ladies and gentlemen. Also, a very warm welcome to all of you from DIHK, the Association of German Chambers of Commerce and Industry, and also from our point of view. This event is an important milestone for a fantastic cooperation, what we have with the Internationale Wirtschaftssenat, the German Emirati Joint Council for Industry and Commerce, our AHK UAE. AHK stands for Auslandshandelskammer. And last but not least, the embassy of the UAE here in Berlin. A great joint venture in 2021, just at the right time in this COVID-19 pandemic times, to prepare for one of the most important events this year, the EXPO 2020 or 2021 in Dubai. Thanks to all our partners and speakers for realizing this webinar together in really challenging times. The slogan of Expo Dubai, connecting minds, creating the future, is really up to date, and it's forward-looking and needed at the same time. Today we look at mobility and logistics in order to discuss ways of individual and sustainable transportation. The last year has shown that supply chains and trade, as well as personal mobility, are facing new challenges. And it's the Suez Canal, as mentioned by Thomas Matusek, but is also, of course, the disruption in international physical mobility, transportation by airplane, which really sucks. 2 weeks ago, I presented some key figures and key findings of our latest international surveys at the Hannover Messe, which took place on a virtual base. And one outcome is that out of 2,000 industrial German companies, 43% plan to invest abroad. 43% is that high number. It's the lowest number in the last 10 years, with a peak of 49% in 2017. In the context of the COVID-19 pandemic, a considerable proportion of industrial companies intend to invest in diversifying their supply chains abroad. And from a German perspective, because we have surveyed this questionnaire among German companies in the manufacturing sectors, the central motivation for investment abroad remains sales and customer service. Another outcome of our surveys, the latest survey, is that 4 out of 10 companies are really complaining problems in their supply chains right now. diversifying the supply chains, nearshoring, and digitalization in transportation, in data flows. I do think these are the main trends. Some say globalization is at stake. I would say we see another reshaping of the globalization. And logistics, transportation, and mobility built, so to say, are the nerve center of our global and connected economy. And our economies need to find answers in new ways to face these challenges in order to become more resilient and in order to shape the future in a good manner. And I'm glad that we have a fantastic lineup of experts here today from all relevant sectors to discuss questions like, what are global developments and concepts which are already implemented? Which effects have digitalization, mobility 4.0 for global trade? And just to drop some keywords, I mean, I've discussed with the German Bundesbank 2 days ago international payment systems, which are transforming really tremendously. We have to discuss about digital currencies. We have to think about not only free trade of goods and of services, but also data flows. What are the standards? This refers to questions for the trade policy, for even international taxation, yeah? Not to forget artificial intelligence, standards in artificial intelligence and all that. So it might be that we can only touch some of these points, but it's absolute of utmost importance. And therefore, I'm so grateful for having this event, and thanks once again for the organizers. So last but not least, I hope to see all of you, and inshallah, physically, yeah, at the Expo in Dubai this year. From my perspective, this will be my first trip, yeah, hopefully with an airplane, now for 1.5 years, and then it might be almost 2 years, yeah? No airplane, no airport. The AHK UAE, led by Oliver Oehms, of course, is our important partner of the Expo Dubai, and he is also of the official German pavilion. And if you have not done so yet, just get in touch with Oliver and his fantastic team. They will support you in making your way to the UAE and the Expo Dubai. I want to stop here and hand over to one of the best ambassadors. It's my best ambassador here in Berlin, if you allow, Excellency Hafsa Al-Ulama. It's always a pleasure to be in touch with you, and the floor is yours. Shukran. Vielen Dank.
Dankeschön. Dankeschön. Thank you very much, Doctor. Appreciate it. Okay, I'll try to be brief. Your Excellency, Ambassador Thomas Matusek, Dr. Volker Dreyer, our dear friend, Oliver Oehms, and dear speakers and participants. It's always a pleasure to be part of the dynamic German business groups. I feel a lot of energy whenever we have our discussions, so I look always forward to our discussions. 20 years ago, we started this century with Hanover Expo, with the theme of humankind, nature, and technology. And this October, we will start the world after Corona with Dubai Expo, with the theme of sustainability, mobility, and opportunity. Despite our current challenges, the world is yearning for a better tomorrow. Germany and UAE are determined to make the future a better place. We are focused on connecting the world and having a positive impact. And mobility is a key driver for progress in the future. But not any kind of mobility, rather one that is responsible, sustainable, and friend to the environment. And I think here comes our challenge for today's program. What do we mean by friendly mobility? What sources of energy are we considering? And how do we make sustainable energy economically feasible? Today's discussion will pave the way for the world to ponder upon during Dubai Expo. Definitely your participation today will enrich the discussions that 192 countries will have over 6 months, starting from 1st of October in Dubai, UAE, the hub of the world. Dear friends, we might not have all the answers, but the key point is that we are trying and trying hard. As Albert Einstein said, failure happens when you stop trying. Thank you very much again, and I look forward to the program today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Thank you for the kind words. It's always a pleasure to have you in our calls. And I just was browsing through my calendar of the last 12 months. We have met so many times digitally and not a single time in person, which is unfortunate and definitely also a symptom of these days. I don't dare to say that we are blessed living in the UAE, which enables us to meet people, also to meet in groups and gatherings, as we just came out of our annual AHK Iftar last night at the Dubai Marina. Very impressive to see, and that's only a side aspect of mobility and transportation, that Al Ain, the giant wheel, starts to turn. And also I could feel the excitement of our business community that with the turning of Al Ain, indeed Expo is getting very close. I have the great pleasure to take you now for the next hour, a little bit more than an hour, through the very complex world of transportation, logistics, and mobility. And it's a challenge indeed to try to bridge, so to say, from the different segments of this complex value chain, starting from heavy-duty vehicles, and then finally, we will be talking about what is so famously nowadays called the last mile. As we have one very dynamic German startup in the call with us. Last but not least, I have the great pleasure, and I saw that she's with us in the call already, that Tala Al-Ansari is with us, and Tala will enlighten us what they have, so to say, in their files, especially with regards what's happening next once Expo is concluded. Tala Al-Ansari is, amongst others, managing the District 2020 project, the innovation ecosystem. So it's an interesting challenge for me, admittedly. Therefore, my main role will be a very strict timekeeper, together with my dear colleagues from IWS and Philip Andre from DHK. We agreed to force every resource person into a 5 minutes impulse, or a pitch, if you might want to call it like this, succeeded by a 3 minutes Q&A. And I have the interesting challenge then to tie a little bit and some knots between the different narratives. So that's an interesting challenge. We will have no physical or visible presentations, at least for the first 5 speakers to come. Therefore, what really matters is what our colleagues will be sharing with us verbally. Having said so, I would like to invite Reto Leutenegger. He has been briefly introduced by Ambassador Matusek already. Reto is the CEO of EFOS 1 AG, which is, and I really had to look it up because I think the devil is into the details. It's the world's first series produced all battery powered truck. So Reto, enlighten us, please. What are you doing? What do you have to offer in terms of mobility of the future, and how can possibly the UAE be part of this?
Many thanks and greetings from Switzerland. I'm very pleased to be able to express myself, my company, about this electromobility subject. So let me share a short presentation. I hope you can see it. Something is not working, sorry. So, what is it about the electromobility in the commercial vehicle sector? As you know, logistics is a growing industry, but also a strong driver of the climate change. In Germany, for example, freight transport accounts approximately 25% of the greenhouse gas emissions. So the EU set up a new target to reduce these emissions by 42%. Last week, they just increased this target up to 55%. So that means just in Germany that we have to build 175,000 up to 250,000 vehicles with powered alternatively. So that's a huge amount just in Germany, and when we think global, that's a huge amount of vehicles we have to build. And e-Force is trying to be a part of it. We will be a part of it. We started 8 years ago with an 18-ton truck. It was, from our side, one of the first worldwide. China is accepted. I don't know exactly what happened there to that time. You can see here that we have a central drive system, and that means that we replace the diesel space, the motor space, just with our system. On the other side, there are axle drive systems, but from our side, they are more suitable for bus system. Our last product is a state-of-the-art product with a high efficiency. It's 800-volt system, like Porsche, like Hyundai, high-powered with up to 750 horsepower and a high torque. And unique, it has own developed 3-speed gearbox. We want to use these trucks not only in lowland situation, we have to use it also in mountain areas like the Swiss Alps. So this is unique at the moment, and we think we are 2 steps ahead to the OEMs at that point. How can we compare to the OEMs? When we started, we had a team of very young engineers, but the important point from that side is they grew up with electromobility, and so they are really innovative. They just know this and they are pushing it. That's an important point to have a fast developing. We are a small company, so we have the possibility to test our prototypes directly at the customer's side. And when the prototypes has a failure, that means not a loss of reputation. That's for us much more easier than for a bigger OEM. On the other side, we have a short decision-making path. We have lean development, lean production, so that is distinguishing us. Everybody is talking about green ecology. What is green ecology? Green ecology is a system of prohibitions, promotions, and subsidies. But for our economy, it can only be successful when we don't rely on governmental interventions. That's what I call a blue ecology or a blue logistic. So it is considered imperative that we have to bring an affordable price range for our customers with our product. When we go back and see the prices of our prototypes, so they are not suitable for the customers. They are 3 up to 4 times higher. But already with the production of our pre-series, which we start this year of 100 units, the costs for the customers are only double comparing to a diesel truck. When we now look at the subsidies just decided in Germany, they pay 80% of the additional price. We are already within the diesel price range. We also plan bigger production from about 1,000 units a year, and then we will reach this price range, this suitable price range without subsidies. We can't stop. So what are the next steps into the future? At the moment, we convert diesel trucks into electric trucks. That makes no sense. So the logical step is to develop our own platform, which is suitable for electromobility and will give us new opportunities. We also have to use always the newest battery technologies. They're making huge steps at the moment, and I say it like this: every year 100 kilometer more range. We also will use or implement fuel cell range extenders. I prefer BEVs personally. Nevertheless, the pressure from the customers and from the government is high, so we will implement this. And on the other side, eForce is expanding their product portfolio, and we will extend into other markets as we already have done. For example, we do build battery systems for train applications. That's also a suitable thing. And just to say, electrifying is easy. We can electrify whatever you want. The biggest vehicle we built was 110 in total weight, 110 tons. So that's also possible, from car up to bigger vehicles. Thank you for listening.
Time is over. Thank you. Excellent. I was about to say time is over. Thanks for this short pitch. Let me ask you, I understand the product is about to be launched in a certain number of units. What kind of markets are you targeting? And also to put the question the other way around, who should be looking into this technology?
Sorry, the last question?
The second part of the question would be, who should be looking into this technology? You mentioned the mountainous topography and comparing it a little bit to more flat topographies. Is this something which the technology is something that has the right, so to say, parameters for our region?
Yeah, thank you. So we are talking about ranges of 200 up to 500 kilometers at the moment. So that's what we call short or middle range logistic. At the moment, our main customers are doing port logistics, a lot of garbage trucks, whatever. So that means 200, 300 kilometer range. That's the main focus at the moment. And it will be the focus for the next 5 years. After 5 years, we will implement new battery technologies. When we talk about lowland situation, we can build cheaper products. So building a truck without the gearbox is of course cheaper than building a truck with a gearbox. The gearbox is always 20,000 euros about, or something like that, just to say a number. But nevertheless, electromobility should be able to change complete the minds of the logistic companies. So it has also be suitable in mountain areas.
Thank you very much, Reto Leutenegger. It's good that you mentioned the topic of the gearboxes, as Mr. Gearbox himself, Dr. Khaled Alexander Sabah is with us, but please bear with us for a moment, Alex, as I would like to invite Stefan Glepke first. Stefan is the CFO and Managing Director of a fascinating and certainly no longer hidden joint venture between the BMW Group and the Daimler AG. So Stefan, we are talking about car sharing, something that I'm very familiar with from Germany, but which is not very common, admittedly, here in my guest country.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And I guess that is something we should change. Yeah, thanks for the introduction and a pleasure being here. Yeah, ShareNow, just a quick introduction about ShareNow. So most of you maybe not know who ShareNow or what ShareNow is. Yeah, we are European market leader for car sharing. We are active in 14 cities. We have also 2 franchisees. We have 10,000 cars in Europe on the street. 30% of them are already electric. And we have approximately 3 million customers. And yes, we are the joint venture of BMW and Daimler. Both companies have started car sharing more than 10 years ago. Besides car sharing, we also offer software as a service to monetize our technology. So when I would like to talk about mobility, I will focus on urban mobility because that's the game where we are in and where we are active. So in the mid-run, we believe in 4 trends, which are already somehow have already started, but we definitely believe that this will even be more relevant in the near future. So the first trend we see in the cities is road diet, meaning the return to urban quality of life. For example, cycle paths, sidewalks are being expanded and prioritized in conjunction with public transportation. If you guys take a look at Singapore, you can already see that kind of trend. Same happens in Berlin and Amsterdam and in London, for example. So that is one thing we definitely believe that will even be more important in the near future. Second trend, we see mobility seeker. That's how we call them. The young generation they are looking for an experience, kind of adventure when it comes to mobility. And that is definitely a game changer because these people are navigating flexible through all different kind of possible mobility solutions based on the situation they are in, and more pragmatic, they are using mobility solutions. So it's not about that I have my own car. The younger generation is really using different models and different solutions for a mobile experience. A third trend we also see is all-inclusive mobility, somehow related to the mobility seeker. So that means cars, bicycles, scooters, public transportation. This is all bundled. So people looking for an overall solution, and they are willing to use different ways of mobility based on the situation they are in. The fourth trend we also believe in is delivery bots, meaning delivery of goods and food on the last mile has already been changed because of the pandemic and COVID-19. And we believe that this will also become more relevant in the future. So meaning that delivery bots will populate over streets and sidewalks in order to deliver parcels very efficient and of course less COVID relevant. So last trend we also believe in, and this will be maybe in 5 or maybe a little bit longer, be relevant. This is autonomous. So we definitely believe that autonomous cities will become reality. The arrival of autonomous mobility in reality, slowly but surely, will be definitely coming. Cars have more extensive autonomous capabilities, and infrastructure is also being given digital functions. So mobility services and local public transportation will definitely benefit from this kind of technology. So meaning that when it comes to autonomous cars, for example, the car sharing idea will even become more relevant and more popular, because at the end, then it is really about who is going to run the autonomous fleet in the cities and what kind of business model will be implemented based on the autonomous fleet. For example, is it like the telecommunication that we are using kind of licensees? So I don't know, we have maybe in Germany or wherever in the world, 4 or 5 different licensees, and these guys are then operating autonomous fleets, or is everyone doing it by him or herself? That might end in a chaos. So that is for us a big question mark when it comes to autonomous fleet and how the autonomous fleet will be operated. Yeah, then we also think about at the end, assuming that everything I've just mentioned about those trends we are seeing, that those assumptions are correct. So for example, people are looking for all and inclusive mobility and the autonomous mobility becomes reality. For us, the biggest question, and this is really something which, especially as a finance guy, keeps me awake, who is going to pay for it? Because the question is, I mean, there is no free lunch. That's what I learned in the US. When I was 5 years living in the US, there is no free lunch. What we are seeing, especially in our younger generation and the customers, our customers are in the younger generation, they think that this is almost flexible and the flexibility doesn't come with a price ticket. So the business model behind all those new ways of mobility, that is definitely a challenge, because one thing is clear, especially for us as a car sharing company, the cities are forcing us in different areas, and they are coming with requirements, and those requirements cost money. The problem is that our customers are not willing to pay for it. For example, they of course are willing to use electric cars, but when cities are forcing us to in implementation of the infrastructure for running a kind of car sharing electric, that's something we need to finance. But again, our customers believe that they won't do it. So if the public sector isn't paying for it and the customer is not, question mark, who is doing it? So those kind of questions need to be answered, because otherwise we can all talk about sustainable mobility, but it won't happen, because if the business model behind it is unclear and no one is willing to pay for it, there won't be any kind of change. Yeah, what we can think about and learn from each other, I guess, is this kind of new mobilities and way of mobility, especially because we are a European car sharing company. We would like to expand our activities of car sharing, for example, in your country. So whenever you think it's worth to talk about it, let me know.
Thank you very much, Stefan Glepke. Thank you also for the question in the end, because I'm sure that in the aftermath of this event, a couple of questions will reach you. I took some notes, and many of the things are, of course, provoking me to react, and I immediately would like to invite, but I already say in advance, I stick to the schedule. Otherwise, I'm messing the narrative up completely, because I know that Amir Milad from TIA is working on similar challenges, let's put it this way. And especially here in the UAE, which, and it's fair to say, has a certain history of a car-driven mobility concept. Cars are very popular, I have to say, which is good for our German manufacturers. We all like to drive our beautiful German cars here in the country. On the other side, especially the Emirate of Dubai, but also Abu Dhabi, they both have been working very dynamically on some of the challenges that you briefly outlined. So maybe one question from me to wrap up your presentation. You mentioned already one of the challenges, who's paying for it? But if you look into, so to say, the future of the car sharing model, especially, but not only here in the region, where would you say the biggest challenge is? What's keeping you, holding you back
Well, from a business perspective and the business model related to, I guess, when it comes to autonomous, I guess that would be a game changer, and especially for our business model, because car sharing is also the difficulty of relocating the cars. Because if you are in a city and you have very attractive locations within a city where the cars are being used in a very high frequency, but then you have also areas where cars are staying standing around and not being used. With the autonomous technology, that will definitely change, and this will be a boost for our business model, because then we are much more flexible. So personally, I'm looking forward to autonomous driving, because that will be definitely for us in our sector, in our mobility area, a game changer.
Thank you for this cliffhanger, because I know that Dr. Khalid Alexander Sabah has been working on some concepts of autonomous driving here in the UAE. Dr. Sabah, you have been introduced already by Ambassador Matusek with your very complex titles. It's fair to say you are a member of the board of directors of AHK. You are a very active member of AHK, and I trust everyone is familiar with ZF, which is one of the many rather unknown champions and giants of the German automotive industry. But ZF is much more than a company which is manufacturing gearboxes. This is what I've learned in the meantime. Talking about mobility, transportation, autonomous driving, Dr. Khalid Alexander Sabah, please.
Thanks, Oliver, for the kind and nice introduction. And I found it quite funny when you said Mr. Transmission. This is correct. In the past, we were always tagged with the guys of the transmission. Yeah, thank you for having me. I think a very interesting forum to discuss very interesting topics. If you allow me just a short introduction of ZF, because you said maybe hidden champion, not known in the industry. We're one of the 5 largest automotive suppliers worldwide. We're a team of about 150,000 employees in 41 countries with over 240 locations, production, development, and so on. In the past, yes, we come from the transmissions and axles. Company is over 100 years old. But in recent years, there has been a tremendous shift in what we do. We are a supplier for passenger cars, commercial vehicles, as well as industrial applications. But coming from a transmission and axle field, we are moving very strongly into being a supplier for what we call the new generation mobility, providing electric systems, electronic systems, autonomous systems. And we have a vision that we're working on. We call it the Vision Zero. It means for us zero emission and zero accidents. Maybe a brief information what we're doing here in the UAE. We have 3 main topics that we're working on. On one side, we're responsible here for the entire aftermarket in the automotive segment, for all the vehicles where our components are in. Second field is marine. We are also a supplier for equipment in the marine industry, and in the UAE, the marine industry is quite a big industry and an important industry. And the third field is a field where we are now in since 2 years. You've just mentioned it, in the development of this strategy that I was talking of. ZF acquired the company to get there, and to get there installed in approximately, I think, 10 years ago in Abu Dhabi, the autonomous vehicle that is in Masdar city. It's a very interesting application. We're very proud to have that as part of our team now, because this 100% fits into where we see the future of, let me say, mobility going. And you had asked a few questions in regard of this, in regard of trends. Let me maybe briefly give you what do we see as the main trends. And we see 2 very strong pushes which are also driving us. One is the topic electrification, and one is the topic autonomy. In the field of electrification, this is for us very strongly driven really by regulations, especially emission-related regulations. And we see here 3 fields where this, let me say, is coming in. One field is the passenger car. We clearly see a very strong shift from conventional driveline to electric driveline with all its different variants, full electric, hybrid, plug-in hybrid. It goes up to that, we believe in 2030, about 50% of the vehicles sold worldwide are going to be some kind electrified. And this is a very, very strong change. 2 years ago, we only thought it's going to be something like 28%. But now, seeing the vast development we see also in a lot of OEMs, but also the new vehicles registered, gives us confidence that, as I said, by 2030, around 50% of the new vehicles will be electrified. The second field is trucks. Also here, and we just heard the interesting speech of the gentleman in regard of trucks. We believe that also that field will develop. And we also see a strong growth here. Also around 50% of the new vehicles will be electrified by 2030. But we see a further technology in this field, which is the fuel cell. We believe fuel cells are going to be playing an important role in that segment, as well as, let me say, conventional driveline, but using e-fuels, which are, again, for the environment friendly. The third field is buses, and this is where we currently see the strongest development. Electric buses are already, let me say, a very, very important part in a lot of cities. We have a lot of applications, which we personally operate over 3,000 applications or 3,000 buses in the field using our electric components. And we believe that this field will grow strongest. By 2030, we believe that around 80% of all buses will be electrified buses. So this is on the field of the electrification. The other field, which we believe is very interesting as well, is autonomous. We think that this is also a very, let me say, progressing area, driven on one side by, of course, the demand and the need for higher mobility, but also driven by the demand of higher security and safety. And one of the key drivers related to autonomous or to autonomous vehicles is that we're really trying to reduce fatalities. We try to reduce accidents. And this fits also into what I mentioned, our zero accident vision. This is also a very interesting, let me say, field, because we believe that, of course, the digitalization is pushing this topic. The technology is pushing this topic. And there is a huge demand for these type of vehicles. Again, here, a little bit of a vision into the future. We believe that by 2035, over 700,000 vehicles in Germany will be autonomous vehicles, robo-taxis, units driving around. There is a big, big development happening here. You asked what keeps us busy, what are the, let me say, the things that keep us awake. Well, of course, on one side, we are trying to, let me say, fulfill the vision and work in the direction of our vision zero, and the new mobility of the future. But there are a couple of, let me say, challenges that are there. We have an extremely strong change in technology, accelerating change in technology. We have, of course, the topic of emission and climate change. And of course, a further field is to keep up with the change of regulations and the change of policies, which are pushing very strongly towards these new technologies. So yeah, that's keeping us busy. You've also asked in one of your questions, how did COVID affect us? I think that neither the electrification nor autonomous vehicles or the concept of autonomy was affected by COVID. What COVID has done is it has, in our opinion, pushed towards digitalization, especially in processes, in corporate processes, as well as in our private processes, when we order things, when we want to define a route to travel from A to B. But where we see that COVID has affected us is actually the demand for individual mobility. We see here that the public transportation sector is suffering and has suffered throughout, let me say, the COVID period. But we believe that the public transport, or sorry, the individual mobility is important and will continue. We also see what happened, for example, in the tourism industry. Yeah? Coaches is one of the segments where we were very strong in. This segment is really suffering. Yeah? So last point that you had asked for is, where do you see cooperation between our two countries? Well, on one side, Germany has a lot of technology, has a lot of, let me say, pioneering technology in the field of electrification, as well as in the field of autonomous systems. On the other hand, the UAE is a very active environment, a very innovative environment. Its leadership is extremely visionary, and really not only open, but really pushing towards new technologies, to implement new technologies and bring these services to its people. And here, just to mention two fields where I clearly see cooperation. One is in the field of autonomous, and this fits 100% into the strategy of Sheikh Mohammed, defining that by 2030, 25% of all transportation should be driverless. This is a tremendous vision. And the second field where I believe that good cooperation has a lot of ground is in the field of e-fuels. E-fuels are needed to drive as well, let me say, the change that we have in the demand for environmental friendly vehicles, be it passenger cars or be it commercial vehicles.
Thank you very much, Alex. I have a lot of questions coming to my mind, especially later on during the discussion, I would like also to utilize the fact that you are a board member of UITP, the MENA chapter of UITP. Needless to mention that UITP is the Association of Public Transportation. Therefore, you have not only your heart, but also your eyes and your ears close to developments of public transportation here in the region, which certainly is not only an asset for us in AHK, but also for the discussion today. But I mentioned already that Amir Melat is with us. It's one of the companies which we know from Germany when walking through the larger cities in Germany. They are the ones providing us with these turquoise colored beautiful scooters and related apps and concepts. And Tia is quite new to town, if I may say so, to Abu Dhabi and to Dubai. Amir is the person in charge. Amir, you have heard a lot already about the last mile. I really like the topic of Stefan Glepke of road diet. And this all must be sounding like music in your ears.
Thank you, Oliver, and thanks for having me. So this is exactly where I wanted to start with the comments of Stefan from Schernau. So Tier is one of the new kids on the block here in the UAE, and in general, Tier stands for shared micromobility. So very similar to what Stefan already in general explained about shared mobility. Tier specializes in the first and last mile transportation via, let's say, light electric vehicles. You mentioned already the scooters. This is part of our portfolio, but we also do provide e-bikes, e-mopeds, so small electric motorcycles, and we integrate with car sharing apps such as Free Now, which is part of what Stefan already explained, and also public transport. So in its relatively short history, just want to maybe briefly talk about Tier, and then also talk about trends and the pandemic and where do I see the future. In its relatively short history, Tier is now active in over 100 cities, mainly in Europe. And since a year and a half, we have expanded to the Middle East, primarily with headquarters here in Dubai and Abu Dhabi, to roll out our micromobility concept in the region. Now, it is very sort of important to highlight that we are part of a trend, and in order for this trend sort of to succeed, the road diet or the city diet is a necessary evil, because, as you said, Oliver, the UAE and GCC in general are very car-centered transportation infrastructure. So the urban space is designed for cars, but we see a lot of trends accelerated by the pandemic, where we really see less individual transport, and cities are encouraging in order to reduce carbon emissions, reduce congestion and CO2 emissions, to implement cycle lanes, to implement to repurpose parking spots, to repurpose car lanes in order to create more green space and more urban space in the city. So this is definitely a trend we have seen in Europe. And if you look, for example, at the city of Paris, the city of Berlin, there, especially in the pandemic, we have seen that people are avoiding the crowded buses, people are avoiding the subway, and people also have changed the way they live. So today, you know, when you look for a new house or a new apartment, ideally you're very close to the office. If you're not working at home, ideally the school, the supermarket are all in close vicinity, which provides a very good business case for shared micromobility. Where did we see the biggest changes? The biggest changes are really in expanding this public space to individual shared micromobility. Another trend we have seen is really that the public transportation systems, for example, the RTA in Dubai, they really also realized that need for safe and affordable transportation. And they have partnered very early with us to really extend their, let's say, the linear connections from the metro, from the tram, and then to connect within the neighborhood with shared providers like us in order for the people to reach their final destination. Okay, and in terms of timelines, it's really difficult. It depends always on the vision and on the maturity of each city. But we really see that cities in the next 2 to 5 years are going to look at quick wins. So how to quickly repurpose the city for people, for their immediate needs, to jump on a bike, to quickly go to the supermarket. And then in terms of infrastructure and master planning, what we see, large parts of the street are already being dedicated to individual transportation. Now COVID, what has happened with COVID? Obviously, similar like the airline industry, nobody knew what's going to happen. And when everybody was locked at home, we basically had a pretty, uncertain time. And there was 2 decisions TIER could take. The one is to mothball our fleet and to wait till everything is over. But we decided not to do it. We decided, given that public transportation came to a halt, that we continue operating our fleets. And what that has enabled, it has really enabled people during the lockdown to use a mode of transport if available. And if not, people actually very quickly bought bikes if they didn't have bikes. And as we all know, electric bikes, for example, are very hard to source at the moment. That means globally, this has really shifted the gears towards people looking for individual transportation. So we provided 1 million rides during the first weeks of the lockdown, and that was really a proof that people trust this mode of transport and feel safe with that mode of transport because it's individual. So all in all, I can say that micromobility, shared bikes, shared scooters, will be a key pillar. But what is very important is, as the colleagues before said, is that providers from all segments, together with the public transportation or the regulators, really create a network so the consumer or the resident of each city can have a seamless journey, whether be it using a scooter to the shared car, or the shared car to the metro, or any of these combinations. They can only happen if there's a larger vision in place in the city. Which brings me to my last point: is how can the UAE learn from Germany, or the other way around, or how where are the cooperations? So what we have really seen is that as part of the visionary agendas, which have been implemented and accelerated during the pandemic, UAE is really seriously looking at shared transportation, at autonomous driving, and at the network that is being created by this electrified environment in terms of charging infrastructure and changing the road layouts. So we have seen a lot of trends which were actually led by, let's say, sort of the European capitals, but in parallel, we have seen the same programs being implemented here in Dubai and Abu Dhabi. So I don't think that there's any particular city that's really important to sort of foster the exchange and the learnings between the countries. And we have been really fortunate to be part of launching micromobility here in the region. And hopefully you will see more of the turquoise vehicles around the city and around other cities here in the GCC. And we are more than happy to be part of this new transportation infrastructure.
Thank you very much, Amir. There was one important topic also mentioned by Stefan. It's the critical issue of charging infrastructure for any kind of, let's say, vehicle. And of course, I could ask the same question also to Reto, which is depending on a kind of infrastructure for charging its vehicles. So obviously, it's a bit easier, I assume, naively maybe, to recharge a scooter than a truck. But how are you dealing with the situation here in the UAE?
Yeah, so what we have here in the UAE, we really developed our hardware capabilities to an extent that our fleet is deployed on the street, and we only exchange the batteries to keep the fleet charged. Now, this is obviously, as you said, much easier than for a truck or for a car. This enables us really to use small charging hubs within the city to keep our fleet maintained and charged. But what we also have done, we have thought forward, and we have introduced the Tier Energy network, and this is currently being rolled out across Germany, where the consumer himself or herself can actually change and recharge the batteries from local charging spots, which are mainly located in small supermarkets and outlets. And with that, we hope to be a more inclusive service by driving down the cost, because we sort of outsource the charging to the consumer, and also to
So there seems to be a tiny electrical glitch in the connection with Amir. All right, then maybe let me get back to Amir once he's technically with us again. But it's also, again, a nice cliffhanger to our next speaker, which is Alan Williams. He's UPS VP for the partnership with EXPO, if I may summarize it like this. Obviously, UPS is a global partner of EXPO 2020. But before Alan starts with his presentation, I would like to ask him to also briefly comment on e-mobility. I know that UPS has been venturing, so to say, in this kind of mode of transportation. Is this something that you are looking into here in the UAE as well, Alan? And what do you have on your plan, in your files, so to say, for the upcoming very exciting Expo? Alan.
Okay, thanks, Oliver, for the opportunity to participate in today's event. As you said, that UPS is the official logistics partner of Expo 2020 Dubai, and we signed up as partner in March 2017. So we've been working on solutions for Expo for quite some time now. But to answer your question, yes, e-mobility plays a huge, and sustainability plays a huge part in what we're doing. And certainly Amir referenced some of the trends a few minutes ago. And certainly we're sort of aligned with the approach he talked about, because we do see cities becoming larger and also smarter, with inhabitants looking for less emissions, less noise, less congestion, more cycle lanes, and also more pedestrianised zones. So therefore, the traditional ways of servicing or providing services to our customers has got to change. And our approach is certainly to be part of the solution rather than being seen as part of the problem. And certainly some of the solutions we're working on, Amir mentioned e-bikes, we're looking at e-quads, electric vehicles, all sorts of other things as well, solutions. And some of those will feature in our operations for Expo 2020. A couple of weeks ago, we announced the world's first electric vertical takeoff and landing aircraft. Again, probably not so much for cities, that's more aimed at more extended areas, but I think companies such as UPS and our competitors have to start looking at alternative ways to really approach mobility and sustainability. If I can just move on from that question. So, as I mentioned, we became the official logistics partner of Expo 2020 in March 2017. The event provides UPS an opportunity to demonstrate the future of logistics on a global stage. We will bring the best of UPS from around the world to our Expo operations or to thought leadership events during the event. Plus, we will be showcasing a few surprises along the way as well, so watch this space. It also provides us an opportunity to further develop our footprint and presence in this region, a region that is a high growth market and also a global cornerstone for commerce and connectivity. Currently, we have about 40 to 50 people dedicated to the project here in Dubai, but I'm backed up by 543,000 UPSs around the world, including 20,000 in Germany. So I think I'm very lucky to have such a large team supporting me. UPS has its largest international air hub in Cologne in Germany, and we have daily flights in from Germany and to Germany every day. And good thing for us is our flights are full. As we've seen during the pandemic, logistics and supply chains have become key, and certainly the network which comes into and out of Dubai for UPS is evolving, upscaling to 747-8 freighters, which are some of the most modern and most fuel efficient and sustainable aircraft in the skies. So we've been evolving that, not just in the back of Expo, but just on the back of the whole business growth. UPS is a leader in global logistics, offering a broad range of solutions, including the transportation of packages, but also freight, customs and brokerage services as well. And we're deploying advanced technology to more efficiently manage our customers' supply chains across the world, but also we're bringing these solutions to the participants of Expo 2020. We see part of our role in Expo 2020 as helping to bring the world to Dubai and Dubai to the world by connecting Dubai through our network, which is a smart global logistics network, a network that moves 3% of the world's GDP every day. And in a world where partnership and cooperation is so important for growth and progress, we're connecting smart cities like Dubai to other smart cities around the world. We are committed to creating a more sustainable company and world by being customer first, people led and innovation driven. We're applying decades of experience from across UPS in sustainable logistics to manage and mitigate the environmental impacts of the Expo. Back in 2016, when we started talking to Expo and to the Dubai government about the event, one of the things which attracted us to this event was the sub-themes of mobility, opportunity and sustainability, because those so closely aligned with what we're doing as a company day to day for all our customers in the globe. In a region whereby UPS, probably one of the few regions in the world where UPS is quite not as well known as we are in Europe, North America, Asia, etc. It became a fantastic opportunity and platform for us to really demonstrate the future of logistics. Excuse me. So for us, Expo 2020 is an undertaking with a focus on the future. It's already started. We've been operational now for 18 months to 2 years, getting ready for the Expo, bringing participants to the games, to the event. And more and more countries are coming. It's going to be peaking in July, August this year, with the opening scheduled for October the 1st. So we're live now. We're connecting minds, we're creating the future. And for us, Expo 2020 becomes the perfect platform to show the world the logistics of tomorrow.
Thank you very much, Ellen. Connecting minds, creating the future indeed, but also connecting people to people and warehouse to warehouse. We have been talking already about the topic of last mile, without forcing you to disclose any of the surprises, as you called it, that you will be launching during Expo. We all have been speculating about last mile drone services being offered here in the UAE very soon. We know that some people are working on solutions in the background. Is this something, and I know that UPS has been, so to say, experimenting with this technology, not at least in the US already. Is this something that you would see as an option here for the UAE in a very densely populated area?
I think we see drones as definitely being part of the solution, but not the solution. I think it's part of many other solutions. Talked about the vertical takeoff landing aircraft, e-bikes, e-quads. It's even access points where you set up counters where people can pick up or drop off their packages close to their home. A lot more home working, we're seeing a huge take up, and that's certainly in Europe in particular. So drones, I do see as part of a solution in the future for UAE. For the Expo itself, I'm actually having a static drone built at the moment. It's static because to fly a drone at the Expo site is not the easiest. There's a very large international airport right next door to the Expo site at DWC. And it's very complicated to operate drones in that area. So we will be doing more thought leadership showcasing drones. Matnet, who are one of our drone suppliers in the US, and they're building us a static drone, and we'll be doing a bit of a display, static display during the event around that.
Thank you very much, Ellen. Again, a beautiful cliffhanger to our last but not least speaker, Tala Al-Ansari, which I briefly introduced already at the beginning. Tala, she's the one taking care of the sustainability of the Expo ground, if I may call it like that, as she is overseeing the implementation of District 2020 Global Entrepreneurs Program. So I understand it very naively, maybe again, Tala, that you are the one making sure that the startups of the world are locating in District 2020. So can you share a little bit with us what you are working on, and especially what would it potentially mean for people covering the logistics, mobility, and transportation sector?
Sure, thanks, Oliver. I think our focus is around both startups, but even attracting large corporations, because we're setting up a whole innovation ecosystem as the future of Expo 2020. I'm just going to share a few slides to really give you an idea of our plans post-Expo, because I feel there's so many opportunities for a lot of the entities that we heard from today to really become heavily involved, not only in the 6 months where Dubai hosts the Expo, but really as a part of this innovation community that we're setting in Dubai thereafter. So I'm just going to be sharing a few slides with you all today. Just let me know if you can see the slides. Sorry, are you able to see the slides?
Yes.
Great. All right. So District 2020 is the site where Dubai is going to be hosting the World Expo for 6 months. And then we're going to retain 80% of all the buildings, the assets, the infrastructure, and the 5G networks to really open up the human-centric smart city and innovation ecosystem we're calling as District 2020. So in terms of timelines, Dubai will be hosting the World from October up until March for 6 months. Then we will have a 6-month transition period and immediately open up the area as District 2020 in October 2022. This is a visual of what District 2020 would look like from a helicopter view. So just for you to visualize the size of this smart city that we're putting together, this is around 160 football fields in size. It's 4.38 square kilometers. So we're attracting so many corporations and entities. We're going to have more than 55 different commercial buildings and a population of 145,000 people once we reach full capacity. We've also got a 4-kilometer dedicated autonomous vehicle loop and a dedicated area which we're calling a living lab that I think many of you will be interested in, and I'll get into in a few minutes. In terms of our location, especially for logistics, I think this is interesting. We're ideally located in the growth corridor of Dubai. So we're just around 15 minutes away from the port and just around 10 minutes from the Al Maktoum airport. So we're greatly connected to those two areas. So the first thing that I just want to share is really kind of general information about the city of Dubai overall, obviously being a global launch pad. Around 2.5 billion people are just 4 hours away from Dubai. But when you really think of Dubai in terms of connectivity, we do have the world's 3rd busiest airport, and we're the 3rd best when it comes to logistics globally. But when you think of the innovation ecosystem and community that we're creating, I think it's also important to really look at Dubai being the melting pot of around 200 nationalities and the 5th best city for expats to live in. District 2020 is a free zone. But what really makes us different from all the other free zones that you've seen in Dubai before is that we're not just another area to set up your business, we're actually building a fully curated innovation community and ecosystem around 4 industries. The first of those is smart logistics. That's a heavy focus for us. And I think there's a lot of exciting opportunities we can explore, specifically with Germany being a leader in this field as well as the areas of smart mobility, smart cities, and digital healthcare. So when we're looking to work with companies, we're also looking at huge corporations that are Fortune 500. We're looking at startups, SMEs, accelerators, incubators, academic institutes, and venture capitalists, all that focus on these 4 industries that we're looking at, or that provide deep technologies that support these industries. So in essence, when you think of District 2020, we're really a one-stop shop in Dubai that brings together government from Dubai, startups, corporations, academia, accelerators, all in one location to really create that innovation community around the industries we're looking at. So District 2020 ideally is not just a place to work, it's also a place to live and play. We've got amazing pedestrian-friendly walking streets. And I think the design of this human-centric smart city is another way that the UAE is going to enable this micro-mobility that we're looking at and enable this. The design's really going to help support that industry. We've got 45,000 square kilometers of green spaces, 10 kilometers of a biking path, 5 kilometers of a jogging path. And so District 2020 is actually the region's first WELL community standard pilot. And for those of you who might not be familiar with WELL, WELL is an institute that certifies buildings and communities that really promotes a lifestyle of wellness in terms of helping people move around because of design, but also access to natural kind of shading, air ventilation, and a lot more around the elements of wellness. The next piece is relating to how we as a human-centric smart city will really contribute to boosting innovation in the industries we look at. We as District 2020 are also setting up the Middle East's first living lab. And this lab is powered by 5G technologies and the smart city infrastructure and services that we're using to host the Expo. We will be having dedicated areas within District 2020 where startups can plug and play into this 5G network to pilot and test and reiterate new solutions as they work very closely with government or corporations as well. And it's another way for corporates to kind of feel comfortable at testing and working with startups in a safe environment before rolling it out fully across the city of Dubai. The next piece really relates around how we in our innovation ecosystem at District 2020 are going to attract startups internationally. So we've set up a global entrepreneurship program called Scale to Dubai. And Scale to Dubai is what's going to enable District 2020 to support all the global startups who are kind of at the stage of scaling. So they're your Series A and seed stage startups, who have a branch back home, they have a product or solution, we know it works, and now they want to open up a second branch and scale internationally. For those startups, we provide them with soft landing benefits in District 2020, like 2 years of free working space, 2 years of visa, access to the community, access to all the events that we're going to have that relate around our 4 industries of focus. And for corporates that set up in District 2020, this is a great way for them to access a global talent pool that we will have in District 2020 for them to work closely with, or even buy out if that's something that interests the corporate specifically. We've signed 9 kind of partnerships so far when it comes to our Scale to Dubai program. The first one being a local entity called Dubai SME, who are going to help provide guidance to those startups on how to navigate in the UAE market. A partnership with the Mohammed bin Rashid Innovation Fund, who will be providing funding to those startups as they continue to scale. And then many other countries that you see right here, like the UK, the US, Malaysia, and we would love to also set up a partnership with you know, a German entity or an accelerator chamber that can also give us access to German startups because of the industries that we're focusing on. In terms of timeline, obviously with Expo being postponed a year because of COVID, our program also had to follow that timeline. So our detailed application process will start in September this year for the startups. We'll have a panel of technical judges who really are focused on our industries to evaluate all the applications that we get. And we will announce the winners of this program on the global stage at the Expo. Just to give you kind of like an idea of the government backing and appetite we have at District 2020 to support startups and innovations, every year we'd be hosting a new cohort, and each cohort is going to be around 80 to 100 startups that join our community. So for startups, this is a huge boost and support for them to scale into the whole, you know, MENA region through District 2020. And for the corporates, it's a great yearly access to a new talent pool that they could collaborate within our Living Lab. The last point I want to share is obviously being the free zone, we are zero corporate and personal tax. We have 100% foreign ownership, direct access to the metro, basement parking, and flexibility to really give entities who want to set up their headquarters in MENA region here any kind of space requirement that they have, whether it's a whole building like 800 square meters or just a 50 square meters as a start. We've signed 3 entities so far as part of our community. So some of you might have heard this news in Germany. Siemens are actually relocating their headquarters out of Munich and into District 2020, their logistics one, to really be part of the innovation community we're setting at District. And this is a 10-year relationship that we've set with Siemens. Terminus are basically a huge robotics entity in China, and they're setting up their first international branch in District 2020. And DP World are actually opening a huge logistic academy and institute in District 2020, where they will be providing us with a talent pool of youth and also doing research on taking advantage of the Living Lab that we're setting up at District 2020. So yeah, that's basically the plans we have for the legacy and future of the Expo so far, and we're very excited and would be honored to have some of you, you know, join our community and really continue this journey together.
Thank you very much, Tala Al-Ansari. This was very exciting indeed. I'm sure that during Expo we will have the chance to connect on many occasions between you, your team, your colleagues, and the German companies visiting Expo, exhibiting Expo, or using Expo as an opportunity to explore what's happening in the UAE. We are nearly at the end of our webinar, unfortunately, and I have the very challenging task now to wrap up the discussion, which is kind of impossible to do it after the firework of topics, opportunities, and a couple of challenges that we have been able to listen to in the last hour. So I remember a couple of buzzwords that I liked a lot. First of all, there was a topic that actually I brought in, the UAE, or our region, being historically a rather car-centric, automobile-centric society, and the infrastructure has been developed accordingly. But, and I remember Stefan Klepke mentioning some of these developments, there has been a lot that we were able to witness here on the ground, which we can see in Germany as well. I again pick up the term of the road diet. I liked also the topic of delivery bots. This is something that certainly not only UPS is looking into, but also other service providers here in the region. I remember also the topic of mobility seekers. This always reminds me of the many young German interns that we have the pleasure to work with in our office. So while I'm, as an old guy, taking my car every morning to take bridge the 5 kilometers between house and office, these youngsters either take or rent a Tier scooter, or they just buy a scooter and sell it again once their internship is concluded. So we have always a bunch of scooters in our office nowadays, and I'm starting to feel very old indeed. We have been learning about e-vehicles, not only the ones with 2, but also with 4 wheels. It was new to me that the potential of e-trucks, it's no longer potential, but it's becoming reality. And last but not least, from Alan, we have learned that UPS will be launching some exciting stuff during EXPO. And I need to talk to him under 4 eyes to allow me to peek into what they are working on. Having said this, I would like to close this panel and to hand back, so to say, my microphone to our host, Ambassador Thomas Matusek.
I think Thomas is not with us anymore. Maybe his connection didn't work. So I just take over. So thank you very much, Oliver Oems. Thank you so very much to all the speakers. It was really, really interesting. And I think the IWS, speaking in the name of them, is really, really happy to that we were able to host such an interesting event, and we are looking forward to a new partnership with the AHK in Dubai, and also maybe that we can all see each other at the Expo. And yeah, it's really interesting. So Tala Ansanari was really impressive. So thank you so much for the introduction. And yeah, I will close also this webinar and wish you all a nice day, and I hope I'll see you all soon. Thank you so very much. Bye-bye.